Well, the legislature may not be sitting for the rest of the summer, but you can bet Doug Ford's new government is working hard behind the scenes preparing for the fall session. And over the last month, we saw a flurry of announcements, everything from buck a beer to private stores selling marijuana to the repeal of the updated sex ed curriculum. But there's so much more that we don't know. For example, what is Doug Ford going to do with the healthcare system? How will he overhaul it? As well as there's one announcement the city will in particularly be looking closely at, and Doug Ford's promise to take control of Toronto subways. But what will uploading subways to the province actually mean for the city?
We'll upload the subway system up to the province. TTC will still operate it, but when it comes to build and design, it won't be the TTC.
That was Doug Ford on the campaign trail, and he said he would take over the planning and building of subways. But what will the province do when it comes to operating costs, which were downloaded onto the city when Mike Harris was premier? Will the province be taking over operating costs, and what does it mean for the subway land? Will the province be taking over the land and therefore air rights as well?
Well, I think what the commitment was to upload the TTC. And that's something that is an ongoing discussion. There's much more to be discussed with the City of Toronto itself. This is a massive undertaking to change the structure and the governance of the TTC. It is not something that we're going to rush in a haphazard way. We're going to make sure that the plans that we commit to in the end are ones that have been thoroughly vetted. We've sat down with the city to make sure that the decisions that are made are ones that we can all live with in the end.
You know, I'm not in the process of accepting or rejecting vague, undefined concepts. I did make it very clear that we do not expect to, and we will not accept seeing a repeat of the process where they just come in one day and announce this is what we had in mind. They need to consult in advance, and it's our TTC, it's our subway, paid for largely by Toronto taxpayers and customers over time, and we would expect to be fully consulted, and the public, and the TTC, and city staff. What I made very clear to Mr. Yakubowski the other day, and it was a very cordial but a very candid meeting, where I said that we must not see a repetition of what we saw with the City Council. And, you know, that's not something that I'm prepared to countenance.
Now, it's not clear if the city could stop the province from uploading subways. The province seems to be able to do pretty much what it wants. But I posed some of those questions and concerns to the Premier today. Will it help Toronto? Will it hurt Toronto? Like, what will this mean financially for the city if you take over control of the subways?
Well, Cynthia, I think, you know, when we take over something as large as transit, I think it's nothing but a benefit to the City of Toronto. We're taking this off their shoulders, and the reason we're doing it, as I've said all along, for 12 years, we just can't seem to get transit built in the City of Toronto. I said it before, David Miller couldn't do it, my own brother couldn't do it. He could save money, but he couldn't build transit. And John, he hasn't had an opportunity, or I should say Mayor Tory, hasn't had an opportunity to even put a shovel in the ground. And I'm not blaming him, by the way. It's a dysfunctional system down there, dysfunctional council. But hopefully it'll run a little smoother with 25 councillors, and we'll be able to get things done that gets people from point A to point B in a rapid fashion.
Now, politicians meddling in transit for political gain has been a big reason why Toronto has fallen so far behind in building transit. Take the planned Scarborough LRT, for example. The Liberals switched gears and decided to fund the Scarborough subway instead. Coincidentally, right around the same time, they were hoping to win a by-election in Scarborough. Francis?
You know, with the summer session now over, what kind of lessons do you think the Ford government learned? A lot of his ministers are rookies, and the veterans that he has are actually used to being critical opposition voices.
Well, it's a really big switch, and I was talking to Lisa MacLeod about that yesterday, MPP who's also a minister, and, you know, she was used to being a critic for many years, and then all of a sudden the shoe is on the different foot. So I think it's a real challenge for anybody. It would be a real challenge. So I think that they've got a taste of it after a month. I think that they realize that the temperature was perhaps a little too heated in the legislature during question period. I think all MPPs right across the board got complaints from constituents saying, this is too toxic, enough, this is not how I want my politics to look.
You know, you're right, there was a lot of mudslinging, there were heated moments and accusations in the House over the summer. Here's an example.
I'm sure taxpayers would rather have their councillors at City Hall taking actions to improve life for everyone.
The House will come to order. The Leader of the Opposition and the Premier will come to order. The Leader of the Opposition and the Premier will come to order. The Leader...
So that went out of control about accusations over a mocking of an accent. Is this the type of behavior we can expect in the fall as well, do you think?
Well, it's a really good question, Francis, and I wonder if, you know, the summer session, which is rare in itself, usually there's a cooling down period after an election. It started right after the election, virtually. And I think people were still in, you know, that intense campaign mode, and I wonder if after the summer break, if things will be a little more subdued, a little calmer. We certainly did see that in the legislature in the last couple of days. Also, Doug Ford had an announcement at 4 o'clock today. He took a lot of questions, spent at least 15-20 minutes with the media, which he has never done in the past during the election campaign and in the last few weeks. And even at the very end of it, he said, "Is everybody happy?" with a big smile on his face. So I get a real difference, and no clapping too. So there's a real shift. And at the same time, when reporters are getting the questions in that they need and getting the time that they need to ask them, they are less aggressive as well. So it's kind of a win-win, I think, on both sides. And we'll see if that continues
well, we'll see if
when this
cooler
fall
heads
session
prevail,
resumes.
for sure. Thank you, Cyn.
We shall see.